aerial firefighting crew has arrived at St. Francis Bay in the Eastern Cape to assist in the fight to contain the raging fire in the area. Firefighters have been fighting the blaze that has spread to mountainous areas throughout the night. The fire has also damaged property in Krom River and Smithtown in the Kucha municipality. Mayor of Kucha, Hatting Bornman, says more resources will be deployed soon. Meanwhile, the Cape Winelands District Municipality's fire services says the fire in the Langrang and Franschhoek areas in Diboland are still burning out of control despite last night's cooler weather. The municipality says they've, however, made significant progress overnight with several other fires in the district. Cape Winelands District Municipality's fire services spokesperson, Aneska Ruet, says the reconnaissance flight is being conducted to assess the full extent of the fire and to determine its current direction. All right, now joining us for more on this fire conversation is botanist Rupert Koepman. Good afternoon, Rupert. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, we're just speaking to our meteorologists on the conditions currently that allow for these runaway fires, from dry conditions to less humidity. Just share with us your views on what we're seeing, because there are a number of botanists that have now come out to condemn the lack of mechanisms to ensure that such fires don't damage even the vegetation.
Right, and Fumundo, so nice to talk to you. I think the first thing is obviously just to be thinking about the people on the front line, but let's take a step back. What we're dealing with is we live in a place which is fire-driven. So the fynbos vegetation in the Cape Floristic region is fire-driven, and it will burn in summertime, and that'll happen. And so right now we are having an extremely dry summer because we didn't have a good winter. And so everything is much more likely to burn. But then you've been talking a little bit about destruction and destroy, and the vegetation as well as the animals and so forth are actually adapted to live in this fire system. But we as humans have made certain changes to it, which makes these fires more intense.
Mm-hmm. But then if you have some botanists coming out and saying that perhaps you've got a serious situation here where there must be accountability that's taken on the poor fire management and invasive species control that seems to be lacking, would you be somebody that is in agreement with that level of at least condemnation or criticism?
So I wouldn't use the term condemnation. It's how do we manage risk? And so you manage risk by acting consistently throughout the year and not now trying to scramble. At the moment, I've checked on APHIS that there are at least 7 different fire fronts. And so when it comes for budget allocations, generally speaking, people aren't budgeting to fight 7 or 8 fires simultaneously. And you're talking about your plane that had to fly for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, 30 kilometers.
Budget, exactly. At budget time, people are just thinking we need 1 or 2 planes, etc. And that you've got to roll up across the landscape is, in case of worst scenario, what you need. But back to my actual space of competence, which is the plants, definitely the invasive alien management is something which we've been working on as a country for a very long time. And it still needs to be consistently worked on. And there's certain things that private landowners and volunteers can do. So you can go into areas where the invasives aren't very thick, and there you can pull them out as you see them. But we do need to manage these whole landscapes in a way, like your previous guest was saying in Mossel Bay, that if that fire comes roaring over the hill, do we have the capacity to deal with that, and have we reduced fire and the fuel loads in the general area? So it's not a simple thing. This is a long-term allocation of practice. And what we can do as individuals is, of course, just be responsible. So how you're responsible is on these fire risk days, like Nolo was talking about. So we've got that information. Make sure that you aren't busy doing things that could start fires on red days.
Yeah.
And then it's management, and understanding what age your vegetation is. And we need to get also into a position where we are doing proactive burns as well to reduce risk around developed areas. And when we do developments, to make sure that we're not putting them right next to vegetation and into vulnerable places.
But I mean, this information is one that possibly is shared by many in your area of specialization every single year. You're saying that we're
Yes.
living in a fire-driven ecosystem, especially when you're looking at the Cape and you're looking at the element of the fynbos, and then you've also got the acacia cyclops, which exacerbates things. This is something that one assumes that many in those areas would know. But then why would you still have to be preaching management if you're saying that that is a fire-driven ecosystem that we're living under? It's not a concrete jungle that side.
Yes, well, humans are like this, right? You don't act until it's absolutely necessary. And so all these steps that we're talking about, we've been talking about for 30 years. This is not new information. What is new information also is that people are going into these places to try and get content and flying drones, which is potentially bad for helicopters. So you don't want that to happen. But we also got to think about these landscapes, especially like in the Southern Cape. You know, there are livelihoods that are now at risk because flower harvesting from the fynbos is a big industry in these areas. And post-fire, those flowers aren't available anymore because the vegetation takes time to recover. And that will depend on a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, the more invasives you had, the hotter the fires, the harder it is for vegetation to recover and the harder it is to actually stop them.
But what are the financial implications of clearing the invasive vegetation? Is it very expensive?
Yes. And
So perhaps
that's why you want to preemptively get into and maintain areas that are already clear to make sure that they're not spreading. That's your cheapest way, and everyone can get involved there. And then in certain really thick areas, that's where you start needing machinery and specialized tools and so forth. Then it gets expensive. And like I said, if it's not burning, then people aren't so worried about it. But now then it's like, oh, okay, we should have maybe cleared some of these areas. So we do need to almost just get onto a bicycle and say we're starting from one side and going to the other side and making sure that by next fire season, we've secured a couple more places that they're safer.
I want to take you back to the very negligible do's and don'ts that Lehlogonolo also spoke about, which was quite surprising. Just a simple cigarette butt. That if you're living in that area, you've got to understand that something as simple as a cigarette butt could lead to the extent of the damage that we're seeing now. What else should people just be cognizant of?
I mean, even things like broken glass. If the sun hits it at a certain angle and the conditions are right, could start a fire. So you don't think about not littering as fire stopping, but that's one thing that can be done. Definitely any open fires, and it's hard this time of the year because we love brine, but open fires and disposing of waste through fire is something that you need to wait until it's wet and rained again. And then even like your cars and trains making sparks, you know, these are going to happen. So it's not about stopping stuff. The first thing is about being responsible and understanding that almost anything can start a fire. So it's like being responsible in terms of how you practice your life, and then being able to, if you do start something with a little spark, having at least the nous to be able to put it out before it turns into something bigger. And then it's also working with all the authorities, because you're not wanting to spread also fake news. So at this moment in time, people are putting stuff on WhatsApp about fires, but you really want to be checking what the district municipalities are saying, the fire protection agencies, channels like yourself, where you're actually filtering through your sources. And that's how you can like help make the landscape a better place.
And was certainly quite an informative conversation with you here, because many are quick to scream arson, but now we're realizing that there's also an element of human negligence that can lead to what we're seeing now. Thank you very much, Rupert, though, for joining us on the program. That's botanist Rupert Koepman there speaking to us as we continue to zero in on this focus around the wildfires that we're seeing.